Yo. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? We are headed into week 14 of the NFL season, and it's a Tuesday, which means it's time to talk about my wide receiver start and sit analysis for this week. Hopefully everybody is doing well out there. Hopefully you've sealed up some fantasy football playoff spots. You might be starting this week, you might be starting next week, but if you haven't locked up your spot yet, then this week is more crucial than ever that you do so. What did we do last week, though, for week 13? Oh, we just missed our 70% mark. That is our goal every single week, snapping our streak of 3 straight weeks at 70% or higher for wide receiver start and sits. T. Higgins was a huge one. Russell Gage, Van Jefferson, all hits for me last week. Missed on Amon-Ra St. Brown, Deontay Harris. Apparently, Zach Wilson decided to show up last week, and Elijah Moore had a good week. So, just missed it. 69%. I mean, there's worse numbers you could get. But we got to get back over 70% here in week 14. And that's what we are getting ready to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, hit that like button, and let's jump into the start and sit analysis right now. Pittsburgh at Minnesota, Thursday night football. Whew. It might be the week for these Pittsburgh wide receivers to just go off. Minnesota has allowed the most fantasy points per game to wide receivers over the last 4 weeks. And Deontay Johnson on the season right now has the 4th most targets among wide receivers. So I can expect a pretty high volume game for both Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. In Pittsburgh, too, I mean, Pittsburgh right now isn't a good enough team that they're going to run away with the game either, I believe. So there should be more than enough opportunities, even if they are working Najee Harris and running the football a little bit as well. For the Minnesota Vikings, as of right now, as of this recording, it does not sound like Adam Thielen is going to be playing this week. It does not sound like he is going to be healthy enough to get back on the field this quickly. So I'm going to list KJ Osborne as a start this week. Now, Justin Jefferson, he is the wide receiver 2 since week 10. Dude's absolutely popping off right now. No Adam Thielen going up against Pittsburgh should only increase his opportunities. KJ Osborne, after Thielen went out this past week, he had 7 targets. He caught 4 of those, 47 yards and a touchdown. Now, I'm not expecting a huge game for KJ Osborne. I'm not expecting Adam Thielen type numbers because I do believe, even though KJ Osborne has touchdown upside, that the volume could shift over to Tyler Conklin instead. Baltimore at Cleveland. Baltimore, Cleveland, both of these teams are looking to tighten it up a little bit. All right. They're looking to kind of get on a roll. They need to turn things around. They both need to start playing better. Can this be the game that either of them do it? It's going to be in Cleveland. Baltimore, Brown continues to be the main wide receiver target on this team. I mean, he's even missed a game this year, and he is tied for 12th in the league in wide receiver targets right now. So the dude has been absolutely fantastic this season. As far as the rest of the guys below him, Bateman, Watkins, Duvernay, these guys aren't doing anything right now because they're spreading the ball around so much. And I actually mentioned this in last week's show. So if you were listening last week, pats on the back if you remember this. Rashad Bateman was a sit for me. And the reason I listed him as a sit was because, okay, Sammy Watkins is back. I even talked about it on the live show. Sammy Watkins is back. They're really trying to spread the ball around. If it's not Marquise Brown, if it's not Mark Andrews, they're not keying in on a third target. They're giving the ball a little bit to everybody. And John Harbaugh was even asked about that at his press conference this past week. Do they need to get more targets to Rashad Bateman? And his response was, not really. We like to spread the ball around. So that does not bode well for Rashad Bateman the rest of the season. Now, could that change? Absolutely. But as of right now, like I mentioned last week, it looks like they're not trying to key in on a third wide receiver. They're looking at whoever is having the best opportunity or the most open at that time. Now for the Cleveland Browns going up against Baltimore here, Jarvis Landry is going to be a start for me. Now Marlon Humphrey is done for the year. Okay, so unfortunately he got hurt last week. It's gonna make things a little bit easier on Cleveland this week. But part of my concern is how healthy is Baker Mayfield? I mean, the dude has an ankle injury, the dude has an arm injury, the dude is just completely beat up. Now, is that the whole reason he's not playing well? No. Even as a Baker truther, I will admit that he's not playing well at times. He's making some poor decisions. Is it all that? No, I think some of his limited abilities that we've seen this year is because of how injured he really is. He's going out there when probably he shouldn't be. But because of that, I don't really want to buy into Donovan Peoples-Jones this week. I would love to. If you're looking for like a high upside, risky type of flex, maybe Donovan Peoples-Jones, a wide receiver 3. He will be in my top 50 wide receivers this week. I just think Jarvis Landry is safer right now for how banged up Baker Mayfield is. And because of that, he'll be the only start on this team this week because I do believe they're going to get back to running the football. Jacksonville at Tennessee, and for Jacksonville, get them out the door. I have no interest in starting anybody from this team not named James Robinson the rest of the season. There's no consistency. There's no upside. I'm not playing them. For Tennessee, however, Chester Rogers, NWI, and Dez Fitzpatrick. And NWI is Nick Westbrook-Kind, if you can't see it there. Anyway, so these are my 3 guys this week that I'm keying in on. A.J. Brown's going to be on injured reserve still. Julio's been such a disappointment there this year. Don't want to go into that anymore. So NWI, he's kind of the guy who 2 weeks ago, before they were on the bye, was the wide receiver 1 on this team. However, he's likely going to be covered by Griffin this week, and Griffin has actually played pretty well in coverage this season. He's ranked fairly highly. So for me, I'm going to kind of pivot to Dez Fitzpatrick in a game where Tennessee, they probably won't be throwing a whole lot, but they'll be throwing enough. And for Dez Fitzpatrick, he's probably going to be facing safety Rudy Ford in the slot. Now, this is a little bit different. This team, Jacksonville, they play their safety in the slot much more than they play like a slot corner, a nickel corner. So because of that, I'm going to go with Dez Fitzpatrick because Rudy Ford is not great in coverage. He's allowed 29 receptions on 37 targets this season. I think Dez Fitzpatrick in a half PPR league, if he can get about 7 targets this week, should come right in around 10 fantasy points. Las Vegas at Kansas City should be a great matchup. It seems like every single time Las Vegas plays Kansas City, they give them a run for their money. So for the Las Vegas Raiders, Hunter Renfrow and Deshaun Jackson are both going to be starts for me. Now, Hunter Renfrow has at least 8 targets in 5 of his last 6 games. He is 16th overall in the league among wide receivers and targets right now as well. So the volume has been there basically all season long for Hunter Renfrow, ticking up a little bit over the last few weeks with no more Henry Ruggs. But the upside with Hunter Renfrow is just a little bit limited. Like he is getting the volume. He's just not getting like the big plays. He's not getting the big touchdowns. Do they happen? Yes, but it's just not coming enough that you would like to see for like your wide receiver 1 or 2. So Hunter Renfrow is kind of a low-end wide receiver 2, really safe wide receiver 3 start for me. Deshaun Jackson has a little bit more upside. Now, last week he didn't do too much. I'm really attributing to the calf, though. Banged up last week, was kind of questionable all week long. Maybe didn't really have all of it. Hopefully this week against Kansas City, he's going to be ready to go. Because if he is, he could be in for a really nice week. Now for the Kansas City Chiefs, Tyreek Hill, man, he's killing fantasy owners and Patrick Mahomes. 9 drops this season, tied for first in the league. Tyreek Hill needs to get it together. You even saw it like last week, like balls that should be caught right through his hands, and they're falling into the laps of defenders. Like those turnovers are just uncalled for. You got to if you got your hands on the balls, you got to catch it. Did I say hands on the balls? Oh my gosh. Mecole Hardman, Demarcus Robinson, Byron Pringle. All 3 of these guys are going to be sits. Las Vegas has allowed the 8th most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers over the last 4 weeks. So while it bodes well for Tyreek Hill, not for the other guys, because the other guys have been splitting targets the entire season. New Orleans at the New York Jets, and Zach Wilson showed up last week out of nowhere. So, We'll see if he can keep it going. He can keep looking good. But for the New Orleans Saints, Tre'Quan Smith, Deontay Harris are both going to be starts this week in a matchup that should bode well for both of them, offering them both a really nice floor and a really good ceiling. Harris and Smith, they have been the top two options on this team for the last several weeks. Smith has been a little bit more consistent in terms of targets. Now, Deontay Harris has shown some more upside. Kind of the problem is, though, is he really hasn't been able to put together big games. So he might have a game where he has a decent amount of yards, maybe about 80 yards, but he doesn't score. He has a game where maybe he has like 30 or 40 yards and one score. So he's been kind of around those 10 half PPR points, barely missing it in some weeks, barely getting there in other weeks. His upside just hasn't been there, though, because he hasn't been able to put together the big receiving yard games along with the touchdowns. Now, against the New York Jets, anything is possible. So that could come this week. Elijah Moore and Jamison Crowder are both going to be starts this week for me going up against New Orleans. Both of these guys combined for 18 targets last week. They're obviously the top two options. Now that we know that there's no Corey Davis the rest of the season, these will be the two guys that Zach Wilson will be relying on in establishing a relationship with. Obviously, in a lot of these matchups, the New York Jets are probably going to be behind and trailing. So hopefully, as long as Wilson stays decently consistent, these guys will be fantasy points. But their fantasy relevance is tied directly to a guy that really only has 1 week that we can look at this season and say, hey, he looked like the second overall pick. Dallas at Washington, and something is going to have to give with Dallas. This is a really tough team to try and evaluate right now. And honestly, there's a good chance that we're going to be wrong more times than not with them. Because we know they want to keep establishing the run with Ezekiel Elliott, even though the dude looks like he's just banged up beyond belief. Tony Pollard continues to be a guy that gets, even though a limited amount of touches, does some good things with those touches. CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper, 3 high-end wide receivers talent-wise. But you also have to throw in the fact that we have Dalton Schultz as well. So there's so many options on this team right now. Someone's going to have to get, like, there's going to be weeks where we're going to say, hey, these guys are starts, but one person isn't. You are not going to be able to list Schultz, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Ezekiel Elliott, and Tony Pollard all as starts every week and expect the wide receivers and running backs all to hit 10 half PPR points and expect the tight end to hit 8 half PPR points. It's just not going to happen. There's not going to be enough points. There's not going to be enough volume to go around. So each week you're going to have to kind of pick and choose who may or may not make it. And for me this week, it's going to be Michael Gallup. Even though he's played really, really well recently, everything that he's done has been without Amari Cooper, without CeeDee Lamb and some as well. With those guys being banged up or out for different reasons, Michael Gallup has stepped up. But when they're all healthy, all three together on the field, remember last week, Amari Cooper was coming off, COVID issues. He was still being looked at, in the week as being a guy that could really struggle because he was still having some symptoms that was making it tough. Only ended up having 2 targets. This week, hopefully he's feeling a little bit better. Now, if anything else comes out about this, we'll update it in the rankings. But for me right now, I'm going to pivot from Michael Gallup with a hopefully fully healthy Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. For the Washington football team, Terry McLaurin will likely be a back and forth game here. Washington's playing very, very well right now. Dallas, not as well, but that's okay. Dallas still in it, staying in it in games, still playing well in terms of making it a game, even though they're not, bringing all of them home as much as we would like them to. So we'll see what happens here. Again, a whole lot of back and forth. If that back and forth happens, Terry McLaurin is likely going to see a lot of Travion Diggs this week, but Diggs gives up a lot of yards and touchdowns. Yes, he's got a good amount of interceptions, but he hasn't been great at stopping wide receivers this year. So he's going to be giving up a lot of big plays, could give up a lot of big plays to Terry McLaurin. And for Curtis Samuel, I'm going to list him as a start because we'll see what happens with Logan Thomas kind of being out the door right now injury-wise. We'll see what happens, but I think some of those targets, if Ricky Seals-Jones isn't ready to go, could go to Curtis Samuel. Atlanta at Carolina, and for Atlanta, Russell Gage is a start for me this week again. He's tied for 8th in targets right now among wide receivers over the last 3 weeks. So even when it's a tougher matchup like this in Carolina, the volume opportunity is too much for me to look the other way right now. I'm going to go back to him as a start this week. For Carolina, DJ Moore, there's no CMC the rest of the season. So there's more target opportunity for these guys now with DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. But the big thing is with... Okay, offensive coordinator, we're moving on, right? Kind of a surprise last week. What's this team, what's Rhule going to do with this team the rest of the season? What's he going to do with this offense? He has said that he wants to establish the run, but with no Christian McCaffrey, is that really going to be Chuba Hubbard? I don't know for sure. So what's this offense going to look like? Until I see kind of what they're going to transition to, I'm just going to continue to go with DJ Moore. Obviously, if they try to mix in the big plays a little bit more and get Robbie Anderson going, that could change things. But as of now, only DJ Moore. Seattle at Houston this week, and for the Seattle Seahawks, they tried to get DK Metcalf going last week. They gave him 8 targets, which, it's an improvement, but it didn't amount to much. Tyler Lockett has been the most consistent option on this team over the last few weeks, so he's got 90-plus yards in 3 of the last 5 games, and he finally scored last week. It's been a while since he's finally found the end zone. Wilson and Lockett, they're jiving right now, but unfortunately, for some reason, the relationship with DK Metcalf is just not as good as we would like it to be. Hopefully, though, that continues in this game with Houston. They continue to work on getting him going. This is a perfect matchup for it. For Seattle as a whole, they kind of need to get going a little bit more as well, get a little bit more consistent with their offense. For the Houston Texans, Brandon Cook's going to be the only guy that I trust on this offense right now, really. And even then, I don't even know if I trust him. I mean, his 6 targets last week led the team, but he has very low upside due to the quarterback situation right now. Who's it going to be? They've said that it might not be Tyrod Taylor. They might go back to Davis Mills. I mean, Taylor was benched last week and Mills came in. So for the wide receivers right now, Brandon Cooks is the wide receiver one, and I'll list him as a start again because Seattle hasn't been great this season. But I mean, Cooks right now is a really high risk. Detroit looking to kind of keep the winning streak going up against Denver this week, but Denver allows the 8th fewest fantasy points to opposing wide receivers per game. So Minnesota's bad against wide receivers, bad against quarterbacks. I'm not reading into how this team did last week. Yes, Josh Reynolds had some big plays. Yes, Amon-Ra St. Brown had a big game. He had 10 receptions, but I'm not buying into any of that because Minnesota has let everybody score on them this week or this season, it feels like. So for the wide receivers, Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. Now, this is the matchup. This is the week. If Jeudy and Sutton cannot get going against the Detroit Lions offense or defense that is just no good, it's not going to happen this season. This is the last chance that they get. Now, Teddy Bridgewater might be banged up. Drew Lock isn't that good. They've been relying on the running backs more and more this season. It just doesn't look good for these wide receivers, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to give them a start this week. They're a low-end start for me, though. I'm not trusting a whole lot of upside. If it doesn't happen this week, we're done for now. The New York Giants at the Los Angeles Chargers, and I'm not going to be starting anybody from the New York Giants right now. I mean, I don't even know who the quarterback's going to be. Mike Glennon is still in the concussion protocol. So is it going to be Jake from State Farm? Oh, my gosh. I hope not, for the sake of Giants fans. But anyway, why would I list any of these guys as a start right now? We don't know who the quarterback is. We don't know when Kadarius Toney is going to be back. We don't know when Sterling Shepard's going to be back. We don't know anything about the Giants. I'm not interested in any of them right now. For the Los Angeles Chargers, Mike Williams is going to be a start for me right now. I've got Keenan Allen listed as out. Yesterday, being announced, he's going into the COVID protocols. Because of that, he could still potentially play this week on Sunday. It's all going to depend upon if he's vaccinated or not, and we don't know that because it's not information that you can just find. So, if he's vaccinated and he tests negative back-to-back 24 hours, he can play this week. If he does, obviously a start. If he doesn't, Mike Williams, he's a start no matter what this week. I'm going to list him as a start, even if Allen does play. But if there's no Allen this week, Mike Williams is going to be towards a top probably 15 wide receiver for me this week. And for Joshua Palmer and Jalen Guyton, one of those guys, especially Guyton, could also become a start this week. We'll just have to wait and see what happens with Allen. San Francisco at Cincinnati, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel, hopefully he comes back this week. As of yesterday, read a couple of beat reporters saying that there is still a chance he comes back. If he does, I'm going to list him as a start going up against Cincinnati. Now, if Brandon Ayuk is on his own this week, he's going to be a lower ceiling, and he might be a little bit of a lower ceiling anyway. That Cincinnati secondary can be tough at times. Now, obviously, last week, again, a little bit of a blip on the radar. We're still going to start Ayuk, though, because they have been playing so well. They have been playing so well. And Ayuk, let me take a step back. Maybe so well isn't the word to use here. Been playing a lot better than what they were. So especially with Brandon Ayuk, though, starting to trickle up, right? Starting to see some of that early season disappointment go away, starting to get more targets. Not a really high ceiling last week, but still got the work. Now, for Cincinnati, T. Higgins T. Higgins is a top 5 wide receiver over the last 2 weeks. Dude has been on fire the last 2 weeks. Jamar Chase, not so much. He hasn't had a 100-yard receiving game since week 7. We're still going to start him. We just have to understand that if Joe Burrow's just feeling T. Higgins a little bit more right now, that's not great for Chase's upside going forward. Buffalo at Tampa Bay. Stefon Diggs, he's going to be my only start for me this week. He's been really kind of the only consistent option at wide receiver since Dawson Knox returned. Don't really want to talk about Dawson Knox and all of his drops on Monday Night Football, but, we'll save that for the tight end video. But Gabriel Davis, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, really, they've been spreading the ball around to these guys. I mean, Gabriel Davis got a score this past week. I had him listed as a start. Boom! Nailed that. Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, though, they haven't been doing nearly as much, though. Emmanuel Sanders has been seeing less targets since the beginning of the season. Cole Beasley sees a lot less now that Dawson Knox is back. So because they're kind of spreading the ball around to their second option, I can't really go with any of these 3 wide receivers other than Stefon Diggs. Now, against Tampa Bay, they're going to have a decent option. Tampa Bay gives up some big points at times. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, though, both of these guys are going to be starts for me. They both had great weeks last week. Unfortunately, neither of them found the end zone, but the volume was through the roof, making them great starts every week, even in a tough matchup against the Buffalo Bills. Chicago at Green Bay, and last week, Darnell Mooney's horrific game is more to the poor weather condition. So I'm going to say he bounces back this week. We're going to put him back as a start. Dude was one of the tops in the leagues in targets over the last few weeks until last week. So because he's still getting so many targets, and we don't know what's going on with Allen Robinson and Marquise Goodwin, we're going to go back to Darnell Mooney as a start. Now, for Robinson and Goodwin, I don't even know if they're going to be able to go this week. And even if they do, unfortunately, Allen Robinson is going to be a sit for me. And for the Green Bay Packers, Devontae Adams, like we're always starting him, right? And MVS, man, I'm still riding this Marquez Valdes-Scantling train. He may only get like maybe 5 targets in a game, but he can do so much with those targets. The connection is there with Aaron Rodgers. They've just missed on a few passes this season, or he'd be a lot higher than what he is. But MVS, he's clearly the number 2 on this team right now. He's got the big playability. He's the guy that stretches the field for this team. We're going to start him again in this matchup. The LA Rams and the Arizona Cardinals will be my Manscaped must-watch matchup of the week. Don't forget, if you're looking to get any stocking stuffers or nifty gifties for that loved one in your life, head to manscaped.com. Use code word headliners at checkout. You're going to get 20% off your entire package. Get it? And you're going to get free shipping. So head to manscaped.com, code word headliners at checkout, 20% off and free shipping. Thanks to them for being an official sponsor of the Fantasy Headliners again this season. For the LA Rams, Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Odell Beckham Jr., we're going with all of them. They all hit last week. We're going to go all of them again here in this matchup against Arizona. I definitely think that they're throwing the ball more than enough right now to give all 3 of these guys fantasy value on a weekly basis. Cooper Kupp is going to be your safest guy with the highest upside. Van Jefferson is probably going to be right below him in terms of upside and right below him in terms of safety. And then OBJ's upside is kind of right with their floors, and there's his floor or his ceilings right by their floors, and then his floor is obviously lower than them as well. I was making marks on my wall here, and you can't even see it, so I don't even know why I was doing that. But we're going to be starting all three of these guys again this week. And then for Arizona, thank God DeAndre Hopkins is back. It's just good to see him on the field again. Horrible weather conditions led to a really sketchy game. He scored that touchdown on the first drive and didn't do anything the rest of the game other than one catch. So it wasn't a great game for him by any means, but it's just good to see him back on the field healthy and now going up against the Rams. Yes, he'll see some Jalen Ramsey. No, he won't at times either. Hopefully he just makes the best of the opportunities with no Jalen Ramsey on him. There you have it, Headliner Nation. My wide receiver start and sit analysis for week 14 done in the books. Lock it in. Going to be moving on to tight ends next and then rankings tomorrow. Make sure you hit that like button if you haven't done so already. Subscribe if you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners. And leave me a comment down below. Who is your Manscaped must-watch matchup of the week? I'm going to get out of here, though. All of you stay safe and stay healthy. And I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.